Welcome to part 2 of the Scrappy Hot Pad tutorial. If you missed last week's tutorial, you can actually go back. I have attached the link in the description tab below. I did put together a full tutorial on how you can make the strip piecing. If you don't want to finish this block and you're just looking for a quick hot pad tutorial, then any 7.5-inch square will work for what I'm going to show you today. Just imagine if you made several of these, how you could put that into a really beautiful scrappy quilt. But today we just have time to make it into a hot pad. What you need to make it into a hot pad is this Insul-Bright. You can get it at Joann's. I'll even attach a link in the descriptions tab because they do have it on Amazon. And then you're going to want some warm and natural or just something equivalent to it, like a really thin batting. And then you're going to want your back fabric and also fabric for your binding. The binding today we're going to cut 2 3/4 inches wide, and enough length would be about 40 inches of a yard. And remember, if you're going to use 2 hot pads, you're going to need 2 of each. Here is an example of what the binding will look like when we're done. So you can see we're stitching it with the sewing machine. That's what I'm going to show you how to do today. But you also can just hand stitch it if you'd like. I love hand quilting them. So you do have that option if you don't want to do the machine, and it just gives you like a seamless finish. Today you can hand stitch it, or I will show you how to quilt it on the machine. Now, this is all part of my Scrappy series, so if you're new to my channel, you can go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any other videos. So let's go ahead and just get started on the quilting part. So this is the Insul-Bright, and we'll cut 1 8-inch square for each hot pad. Cut 2 8-inch squares of warm and natural for each hot pad. Now cut 1 8-inch square of back fabric for each hot pad. Now place your back fabric right side down, and then the warm and natural, Insul-Bright, warm and natural, and then the top. And the basting method today is going to be safety pins. I buy these quilted ones. They've got a slight curve to them. They're called basting pins, and they do have them on Amazon, so I'll put a link to them in the descriptions below. If you've ever used regular safety pins, you can tell a difference, because when you put them through the fabric, sometimes it'll actually snag, so the quilting ones are really nice to have. I also really like basting spray, but since I was doing this tutorial, I thought it'd be easier to just safety pin it. Also, with your quilting pattern, anything goes. You can do stippling, you can do straight line quilting. I'm gonna just quilt it in a square. So as you can see, I'm kind of taking my time with putting the safety pins in, because if you don't, then the fabric will shift. Even though it's a small project like this, you want to make sure that the fabric stays smooth in the front and the back. I'm adjusting my stitch length to a 3, and my walking foot is attached, so we'll just squeeze this in here, and I'm going to start quilting in the middle, and I'm going to quilt it in a square. I don't like to stitch in the ditch, so I'm moving my needle over so it gets outside of this ditch, because I like to see the stitches. And then I'm just going to stitch along. Let's see. I'm kind of winging it. Not sure which way I want to go. Okay, so I've decided it's gonna be like a square type spiral so that my stitches don't overlap each other. And I didn't make any markings to this quilt top. I'm just using the stripped pieces as my guide. I miss quilting so much. I just love this process because you can actually see it coming to life. And yes, I realize this is just a hot pad, but this is the closest that I get to quilting nowadays. We're almost done quilting it. You don't want to forget about the corners. Make sure that those get sewed down really well, because when you put the binding on it, you want to make sure that it is secure. Okay, here we are, and I love it, love it, love it. The front and the back looks really cute. So we're going to just trim up the threads, trim it up and make it nice and pretty, and then just kind of sit back and admire it for a minute. Cutting my binding 2 3/4 inches wide, and the length is about 40 inches, which will be enough to go around the entire hot pad. Now fold it in half and just take it and iron it down. When we place it on our hot pad, you're going to pin it, and we're going to start right here. We're not going to start right in the beginning. You need to leave some slack. The seam allowance will be 3/8, so what you're going to want to do is measure 3/8 from the edge, and you're going to stop right there. So I've marked my needle, and I'm going to stitch down to the needle, and then make sure that you back stitch to keep the stitches in place. So that's your 3/8 of an inch from the corner. Now fold it up so it meets with the corner, and then bring it back down so that it meets right there with the corner. And grab a pin and hold that in place. This is what we're doing to get us a really nice mitered corner. So measure it again, 3/8 of an inch from the corner. And then start stitching again where your needle is. Make sure to back stitch so it doesn't come unraveled. And then we're going to repeat this all over again on the next corner. Don't forget to back stitch when you come to these corners. And fold it up to meet with the corner, and then back down so it lines up really nice with the corner, and put your pin in it to keep it in place, and then measure it again, 3/8 of an inch from the corner. Okay, I've worked my way back around. You're going to leave a pretty big space so that you have enough room to sew the two ends together. So I'm cutting it right here, leaving about 1/4 of an inch, or let's say 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but now you're going to open up the seams, and this part can be a little bit tricky, but you're going to sew that together. I'm just clipping down the hot pad so I don't have to fight with it so much. Just put a couple of pins in it, because when you get to the sewing machine, it's going to want to try to slide out from underneath the foot. Okay, so I did it. See, not so bad. Now you'll want to open up the seams so that you don't have a lot of bulk. And now we'll just continue where we left off. Make sure that you back stitch, and then back stitch again at the end. And we're done with that part. Now we'll just go through and clip the edges to get rid of some of that bulk. When you start folding the binding over, you're going to want to make sure that it covers the stitch in the back. Let's see right there. You want to make sure it covers it. Because my binding is only 2 3/4 inches wide, when I originally cut it, it doesn't give me a lot of slack in the back.
Because what I usually do is hand stitch the back, but right now we're just going to run it through the machine for the tutorial purposes. So to ensure that the stitches catch the back, we have to pin it and just put a lot of pins in it. Right here I found an area where the binding wasn't covering the stitch in the back, so I just cut out the extra bulk. Now the loop that I'm cutting is 5 inches in length, and it's going to be 1.5 inches wide. And just fold it in and then iron it and fold it again and stitch it. I just picked a corner and I'm just sliding it into the corner underneath the binding. I'm really just making this up as we go along. There's so many different ways that you can attach a loop. Whatever you do will be fine. I'm just trying to make it pretty. So after it gets sewed down in there, we can flip it up and just hand stitch it so it goes up like that. Now, because I want this to turn out perfect and I want the stitches to be able to catch in the back, I'm pinning about every 1/4 of an inch. So you can never go wrong with too many pins. Now I'm just going to start anywhere. Make sure your stitch length is at a 3 and just start stitching right there into the ditch. Don't pull your pins out until the very last minute because you don't want the binding in the back to pull out. My machine is really good. For some reason it never hits the pins, so I can actually just stitch right over them. I don't know why, I don't know how, but it's always been that way. It just glides over the needles. Okay, here we are, and it looks great. It looks like it caught the binding in the back. Let's check out the corners. How freaking pretty is that? I love those miter corners. Okay, so for the loop, I'm just going to hand stitch it to the corner, so nothing fancy.
What do you think? Oh my gosh, I love it. I love looking at all the pretty fabrics, and the binding is so pretty, and you can hang it up. And what person could not use a hot pad? This would be a perfect gift because if they don't like it, they can just put it in their drawer. If it's not the colors of their kitchen, just put it in your drawer and then use it when you need to, you know, get something out of the oven. It's cute and it's practical. So if you liked this tutorial, make sure to give me a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel because I have a really fun project next week. I mean, I know I probably said this project was fun and cute, but you'll love the one for next week too. And it's another one using up your scraps. So until next time, happy sewing.